Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Denzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Denzel, back from Fort Lauderdale, where I went to see Iron Maiden last night. Of course, you listened to my show last night. Well, about the time you were listening to my recorded show, I was at the Iron Maiden concert in Fort Lauderdale at the BB&T Center. It was spectacular. It was a really great show, although I'm going to get into a little particulars of it here in a moment. But drove down there yesterday, rained the whole way. A drive that should have taken under 4 hours, easily under 4 hours, took me 4 hours and 45 minutes. It was just a complete, for an hour and a half of that 4 hour and 45 minute drive, I was going no faster than probably 25, 30 miles an hour because of the rain. Just, going south on the 75, past Venice, Port Charlotte, Northport, going down to Naples, and then the highway turns east. What a nightmare. Wrecks. There was a wreck right in front of me, a fender bender. Cars on the side of the road, police everywhere. Kind of wore me out a little bit getting down there. But finally made it. Car was great. Got down there, had to wait 45 minutes as a steak and shake for my order. That's a true story. Somehow they messed it up. I think they ended up giving my order to somebody else for free by mistake. I think that's what happened. Maybe I'm exaggerating 45 minutes, but it was long. In any case, went to this concert, and then I ended up running into, completely coincidentally, two good disc golf buddies of mine. And so I hung out with them before the show, and they were sitting in a different section. But it was good seeing them. Didn't know they were going to be there at all. And then the concert was everything that I hoped it would be. It was loud. The musicianship was excellent. The crowd was excellent. The venue was excellent. They picked a lot of great songs, but for me, being the first time ever going to see Iron Maiden, it was a big thrill for me. So anything that they could have done was going to be great, unless they totally just, showed up and just, went through the motions. Anything more than that, then I think that I was going to be impressed. But I know that a lot of people there were seasoned Iron Maiden fans, because I talked to a few of them, and I was the only person I ran into, except for my one disc golf buddy, one of them, who hadn't seen Iron Maiden in concert before. So you probably start thinking, well, they're going to do these songs, those songs. They didn't do Run to the Hills, and they didn't do Aces High, and they didn't do 2 minutes to midnight, I mean. That's a surprise to me. Those, Run to the Hills is probably their most played radio song, along with Number of the Beast. And 2 minutes to midnight was popular back in the day, was one of their first MTV videos. It's just a well-known Iron Maiden song. Didn't do it. Then Aces High is just a great tune, which they usually open their concerts with. They didn't play that one either. And talking to the people around me after the show, they were really surprised. And I actually think that there were probably a lot of fans who left that concert last night a little disappointed. I'll be honest. I wasn't disappointed, like I said. It was just a thrill for me to be there. But if you go to see them 4, 5, 6 times over the years, and you have expectations, do you want to hear these songs, and they don't play them? Even at the end, after they had done their 3 encore songs, and they left the stage, people still were kind of stunned that those songs didn't get played. So they kind of ended on a down note, if you can believe it. After 2 hours of completely rocking, they didn't do the kind of the Ronald Reagan always leave them wanting more. It was more like they disappointed their fans. I really think that. Didn't disappoint me, but more the hardcore people that have been around for 30 years. And there were a lot of gray-haired people there, a lot of parents with kids, many, many, many people older than I was, and I'm 45. Many people there older than me. So, but still, great show. And it got back to my place a little after 4 a.m. this morning and went to bed. And it was a good time. But they chose to do a couple songs. They did Blood Brothers. And they did at least one other song where I thought, well, those could have been taken out. And Run to the Hills could have been put in there. Aces High could have been put in there. They did, I'm going to say 5 songs for the new album, which is perfectly fine to me because the new album is very, very good. But maybe they could have deleted one of those songs and then put in one of those other songs, those staples as well, just to give it, I think, a better mixture. And this was the first show of the tour, so you didn't really know what the set list was going to be, and so it was a surprise. Every song that they started, it was a surprise. Now, everybody else is going to know what the set list is, because for the most part, bands keep the same set list, unless they hear somebody like me or fans complaining, which they may alter it somewhere down the road if they get enough complaints, not playing Run to the Hills in some of these songs. But it was great. It was loud, but my ears weren't ringing today, and I'd been talking about it. I wanted to tell you about it. I know that I have some listeners of mine who are at least casual Iron Maiden fans and know who I'm talking about. And so I went, and I will go see them again. However, I don't know when that time will be, but you can sign me up for next time. Went by myself. Brother couldn't go due to work. And a girl that I know here, and a woman I know here in the Tampa area who I've gotten to know, just a friend of mine. I wanted her to go, but unfortunately she's has some surgery to get done, I think, today. Wow, today. So she didn't want to go the day before down there, before her surgery was today. So it just didn't work out that I could find somebody, which was fine. And then I ran into those guys, so it was all cool. So let's get to the show. You email me. You can email me at edwarddenzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Denzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. On my way, now here's where I want to go with this today. I was going to start in one direction, but I want to go in another, being that I went to this concert. My dad had said to me, he knew I was going to the concert. And of course, my parents are still here in the Tampa area till the end of March. And he said, my dad just made a funny comment to me, or a wry comment about, well, you're going to be there and all these people are going to be smoking dope and all that. I said, it's really not that kind of crowd. I'm not saying it's not going to go on, I told him. But really, this is going to be a crowd that's going to have parents with kids and older people. And I was exactly right. Same kind of crowd that I saw when I went to see Kiss or went to see Def Leppard, because these bands have been around for, 30, 40 years. So they have fans that are, well older than I am. But you could smell it. It was in the air. There was a little weed in the air. And, it got me to thinking. And, this is, although drugs and drug enforcement and drug legalization doesn't come up a lot on this show. I mean, drugs are a problem. Overdoses happening more and more with legal and illegal drugs. It is a problem, but I wouldn't say, compared to some of the other issues we have in the United States, I don't know how big it is. It's a concern of mine. I wrote an entire novel about drugs and drugs' effects on its society. It's called Distant. The book's called Distant. And it was interesting that I was thinking that while I was at the concert last night, because on the way down there, I listened to a show with Charles C.W. Cook and Kevin Williamson from National Review. They do a podcast for Ricochet.com called Mad Dogs and Englishmen. And it's pretty good. And part of their talk, a small part of their talk that I listened to yesterday, was about drug legalization. And I thought of that when I got to the concert last night. And Charles C.W. Cook was trying to make the point, he's more for drug legalization than the drug law enforcement, let's put it that way. And he was trying to figure out why the federal government even had any constitutional case to be able to stop the import of drugs, the making of drugs, because he says, well, back at the time with alcohol, they actually had to pass an amendment to do it. Well, they don't even have that these days, which is an interesting point. See, there are two things where I want to go with this. First of all, to me, the federal government has a responsibility with drug enforcement, drug law enforcement, and the way it gets its constitutional authority is because, to me, drug addiction and drug overdoses are a national security issue. You can't have a civilization, you can't have a country if more and more people are getting high and laboring to get high. And I've told you that I believe when it comes to drugs that messaging matters. That when there is no, there aren't any laws against it, it's kind of saying like it's okay. Not that the government is supposed to make moral judgments for us. But we've seen in Colorado, we've seen the experiments that are being done in these states where they've legalized weed, that drug use has gone up, crime has gone up, there's more people getting high, there's more people getting high and driving, on and on and on. At some point, as that curve tends to slope upwards, it does become a threat to a community, to society. At some point. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know that fine line between where it's, you can live with it and where you can't live with it. I just know that you can get there. And we've seen this in other countries where you just have a lot of people who are just checking out of society. The difference is those countries aren't the United States. Those countries don't run anything. Nobody follows those countries. Those countries themselves don't see themselves as being any type of, any type of leaders in the world. And so for us, I'm sorry, but it just has to be a little different. And the point that I tried to make in my book, Distant, is that what happens if you're the only sober, it doesn't quite get to that in my book, but what happens if you're the only sober person left? What if you're the only person who chooses not to do drugs? Then what are you supposed to do? Right? If you make something legal, then that means anybody can do it. It's no different than orange juice, no different than donuts, no different than steak. It's just, you just do it. It's just a product like anything else. What happens if I'm the only person left and there's just a bunch of drug-crazed people around me? Don't tell me that doesn't infringe on my rights. Do not insult me. That's what they didn't get into in that. And that's what I would have said to Charles C.W. Cook. Don't get me wrong. The discussion was very fair. Okay? All right, it was actually a very, they covered, even though they didn't talk about it for a long time, they covered a lot of ground in those minutes that they talked about it. So that's part of it. That's what I would say to Charles C.W. Cook, that I think that people doing drugs and getting high and overdosing can become a national security issue. I mean, there's no bigger national security issue if more and more people are high and can't govern, right? And it's going to have to be up to us sober people, us non-addicts, non-drug users, to sort it all out. That to me sounds like a national security issue. Now, as far as the concert goes last night, I got thinking about this, and I want all of you to think about this. For those of you who aren't into drugs, I want you to take a look at those people who you know who break the law and do it willingly. Do it knowing they're breaking the law. That is also a national security issue when people have no problems with breaking the law. See, what you got thinking as I was there, that if the police wanted to, given what the laws are in Florida, given what the laws are whatever they are in Fort Lauderdale regarding drugs, it's probably for the whole state, that you see what these kinds of people are. It is at least conceivable that if enough people were smoking weed at this concert, and like I said, I think it was very, very few. And I have a little experience with this because, as you know, I play disc golf, so I've been around that stuff. And I know when it's going on a lot, and I can tell now when it's going on a little. And last night, I didn't even see a lot of people even smoking cigarettes, frankly. You know, it's weird how our society has changed regarding that. But these people, they break the law and don't care what the repercussions could be. Here we have 18,000 people there behaving themselves. To my knowledge, there weren't any fights. There wasn't anything crazy going on. No arguments, no speeding, no graffiti, just adults behaving themselves. And then you get these people that can't wait to light up some weed because they're going to an Iron Maiden concert. And really what they're doing is they are putting the event in a precarious position. What happens if the police just came in and said, hey, there's weed going on at this event, we're just shutting it down? These people that do that are, if they're going to do it in the privacy of their own homes, I don't know what you can do about it. If they're going to be out on a fishing boat by themselves, out in the Gulf, out in the Atlantic Ocean, catching some fish, smoking some weed, once again, I don't know what you can do about it. But when it's among thousands of other people who are there for an event, who are going to follow the law, all they want to do is see their favorite band, have a good time with their wife, their girlfriend, their husband, their kids, whoever. And then some people want to start smoking weed just because they're addicts and they know it's breaking the law. Maybe just pushing the police to the point where the police might say, hey, maybe we need to do something about it. You see how arrogant and selfish these people are. Not once do those people think, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do that. It is illegal. I want to do it, but it's illegal. All these people aren't doing it. It's in a public place. The last thing I need is that the police come around and start giving us a hard time. And, the band doesn't want that. The people who are holding the concerts don't want that. The police don't want to do that, but they might. Maybe I just lay off tonight. Maybe I do it afterwards when I get home. That doesn't ever occur to any of them. I've seen it. I see it in disc golf as well. No matter how much a tournament director will tell these guys, don't smoke out on the course. Don't do that, because most of the time we're playing in public parks. These people do it anyway. Do it anyway. And once you start to understand that, it's hard for me, given everything else, on top of everything else, that I really can get on the board with drug legalization because I know who these people are. They're just a bunch of children. They may look like adults. Otherwise, they may act like adults, but they're just a bunch of children who just want to do what they want to do. And we should not change our laws because of those people. Just because they don't want to look over the shoulder while they're smoking weed or doing whatever else. Now, in this discussion with Charles C.W. Cook and Kevin Williamson, they also talked about legal drugs. And in their talk, because Kevin Williamson did a huge story in National Review about heroin and opioid addiction. Heroin is, I guess, an opioid. But opioids are also legal drugs. OxyContin, stuff like that. Which, if you're paying attention to anything in the last 15 years, a lot of people get addicted to it. It's pain medication. It's legal pain medication, but it gets overprescribed. People go doctor shopping. And because they end up becoming addicts, they don't really need it. And then generates like a black market. But at least these drugs have some type of, these drugs are not poison. Heroin is poison. These opioids that are prescribed are not. They can be turned into poison. Well, that's to me different. It's not the drug manufacturer's fault that people get addicted to this stuff by doctors or themselves using underhanded means to get their hands on more of the drug. Whereas heroin is a killer. It's a killer. Cocaine, killer. You don't need, there is no prescribed dosage for this stuff. There is none. It's just poison as it is. As it is. Whether it's a microscopic little part or a kilo or an ounce or however you take those types of drugs. It's all poison. And we should also remember that there are many millions and millions of people in the world who take these opioids that are made by the drug companies and never become addicted at all. Whereas we know what happens to people who end up taking heroin. It's something different. It's just different. Although they may be in the drug family, they may be related in some way, there's just a difference. And as they were saying on that show, drugs in the drug world, in the illegal drug world, drugs that kill people, that's actually a calling card. That's actually a good thing. And in that, you realize how distorted all these people are. And why we know that at least some of us, like myself, know that we have to fight against them. They were talking about this. I think Kevin Williamson chose to do this story because there are statistics out there about how middle-aged, uneducated white men, their life expectancy is actually going down. It's partly because of this. It's partly because of suicide, and it could be. And we're going to get to this, hopefully, before the end of the show. It could be part of the reason that Donald Trump has become so popular. It's feeding into that sector of that sector of our country, that demographic. Mm-hmm. Because we even had Donald Trump say, yesterday, the day before, maybe it's 2 days ago, about how he loves the poorly educated. Remember that? I know what he meant. I'm not going to give him a hard time about that. But it is an acknowledged fact that a lot of his support comes from people who don't have an education, who don't have a higher education, I'd say. People who don't have a bachelor's degree, people who don't have a master's degree. What's that group that is that their health prospects are going backwards right now in the United States. And I wouldn't say it's because of Obamacare. There's just something else going on. Mm-hmm. And he has fed into that quite well, a little too well, of course, for some of us. You know, I would say, of course, us anti-Trump people believe that he is exploiting these people. He's using these people. He doesn't give a dang about these people at all. He's just found a group that he can market his message to, his fake message to. So that was one of the shows that I listened to, but you know, it was weird. I listened to that, and then I got to the concert, smelled the weed, and I'm saying, hey, Charles C.W. Cook, this is the reason that we can't give in to these people. All right? Because it's not that they're just drug users. It's that they don't care about the law. And people who don't care about the law don't get any sympathy from me. I've told you, what I think about all of this. You know, the reason that they've come out with all these different things that weed can do, it's to convince non-weed users that legalizing marijuana is a good idea, where it's all crap. It's not scientific at all. And really, just as its basis, at its core, it's just a bunch of people who want to get high. Or as Dennis Miller said, do you really want to live in a society when the greatest thing every day is people trying to who can get the highest? And that's, I think, what we would create by loosening our drug laws. I'm willing to put that amount of much money into it because I know that the alternative is worse in legalizing it. And taxing it, or all these brilliant ideas that people come up with, mainly people who just want to do the drugs and don't want to have to look over their shoulder. Now, there are economists who try to look at this, but as I always try to say, I don't think you can look at this from an economics point of view because there aren't customers. These people do not have choices. It's not like whether I get up today and decide whether I'm going to go to Walmart or not. These people have no choice. They're addicts. So they're not customers. They're addicts. That's different. And so the economics of how they make decisions is different. In fact, there are none. They want their drugs. They're going to figure out how to get it. And if that means they need to rob somebody, they need to shoot somebody, and that would be the case whether the drugs were legal or not. You have to remember that. Just legalizing it would make it more common. Right? There isn't anybody who's robbing banks to go buy donuts. There's a reason. Even when it comes to alcohol, there's a reason people aren't shooting people to steal beer from convenience stores. If there are any robberies at convenience stores, it's for the money, not for the alcohol. Well, these people, they'll do anything to anybody to get their drugs. Why? Because they're addicts. They're not customers. You have to keep that in mind. So I listened to that show. I listened to Andrew Klavan's show, who is another is a fellow writer, has a nice show, was pretty good. I listened to John Podhoretz. Just as I've told you, I don't listen to a lot of other shows simply because when I'm not doing this show or preparing for this show or uploading the show to all the places you can find it, I'm busy working on other stuff that really has nothing to do with this show. And a lot of that time is the work is done in silence. Or it's done with music on, usually Iron Maiden. When I'm doing some writing, I'm doing some editing. So when I'm in a car, and I don't take a lot of long drives these days, so when I get in the car, I make preparation to listen to some stuff that normally I don't listen to. And I enjoyed it. Of course, all of them were still trying to figure out the Trump phenomenon. They were all talking about the Rubio versus Cruz. Are they going to continue to hammer each other over the head? Are they going to finally go after Donald Trump? So there was that part of it in each of those shows as well. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
Real radio for real Americans. Red State Talk Radio.
This is Brigitte Gabrielle from actforamerica.org. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do not go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not working hard enough. Arm yourself with knowledge so that you too can act for America by listening to Red State Talk Radio. Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. RedStateTalkRadio.com. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
I can't defend my family because I live in Chicago.
I am free to defend my family with my AR-15 or handgun because I live in Wyoming.
I can't even protect myself if I'm attacked because I live in D.C.
I carry my 9mm in my purse anywhere I go in Texas.
I can't protect my small retail shop here in Brooklyn.
We keep guns behind the counter at our shop in Oklahoma. Only had to show it once.
Do you see a pattern?
Demand equal gun rights in America. Go to saf.org now.
My name is Courtney Luster. I'm 21, well-educated, and unemployed American. I happen to be black, so I'm in the highest unemployment segment of the population, black youth unemployment. Notice I don't refer to myself as African American because I'm American first. I'm a proud American who happens to have black skin. So please explain to me where African American fits into that equation. You're right, it doesn't. For over 60 years, the Democrat Party has used my fellow black Americans to maintain power in the federal and state governments. Why do I say that? Because I read history. While many of my friends are watching mindless videos, I choose to listen to Red State Talk Radio. Why? Because I want to educate myself, not entertain myself. Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network. Hey, all you black American youth, be a Frederick Douglass Republican, not an Al Sharpton race pimp. Educate yourself. Listen to RedStateTalkRadio.com.
This is Michael Cutler, retired senior special agent with the former INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service. You should know that I'm also a lifelong Democrat, but ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. That's why, despite being a lifelong Democrat, I listen to Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. Lock it in and rip off the knob.
We're back at the Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Let's move on to something else. I know there's a debate that was tonight. I'm just worn out. I got to tell you, I'm just worn out. I know I listened to some of those shows yesterday while I was driving down to Fort Lauderdale that talked about what Cruz needs to do, what Rubio needs to do. And what else can you say? Sometimes you just get burnt out. Here's the truth. They know what they need to do. They just don't have the courage to do it. Can't we just say that? If I know it, and a bunch of other talk show hosts know it, a bunch of regular people know it, because I see them out there. They're writing and talking out there on the internet. I see it. I see it on Twitter. Many of the supporters of Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, they know it too. And that the candidates don't do it, I don't know what to tell you. I just don't know what to tell you after a while. So, are they going to attack Donald Trump tonight? By the time you listen to this, I guess you'll know. You'll know if they did or not. My guess is it'll just be more of the same. More of what we've seen in the last few debates where they have some run-ins with him, but nothing that really sticks out, that seems to hit as hard as it should. So I don't want to say much more than that. So let's move on to something else. I think that's why I, even for the first part of the show, kind of went in a different direction with the show tonight. Simply because I'm just a little worn out of what's I've been talking about lately. Granted, you have to talk about it. You can't avoid it. But at some point, it does get repetitive. So let's move off in another direction. You know, I saw an article that actually cracked me up. And this is something that I've been saying for years. And it has to do with the internet. It isn't necessarily even something, I guess, actually political. But it is, I think, a big deal. And this is this fight of Google and Yahoo versus Shine Technology. And it's kind of a little bit coming to a head in that Shine is a company that is able to block ads. And that is cutting into Google and Yahoo's bottom line, or at least their future bottom lines. And what was funny about this article, and I don't know how many minutes I really want to go on to this, but you should know about this. I just want you to know there is a technological war going on right now between companies that make money off of advertising on the internet, both on your tablet, on your computers, on your phones, and companies that are out there who are blocking ads. And they're doing it because, just for the record, advertising on the internet has gotten totally out of hand. Pop-up ads and all of these things. I've told you that it's embarrassing to me when I go to some conservative sites and they try to trick you into clicking on an ad. What they do with the ad is they make it look exactly like the regular news stories, and National Review does it, Hot Air does it. It's a little embarrassing. You know why they do that? Because they know that those ads aren't getting clicked on, so they're trying to fool people. Can we just say it for the record? That is what's going on. Now, having said that, I guess the flip side of this is, I think what Google and Yahoo are really worried about is that if a company like Shine, and there are other companies that do this, what they'll end up being able to do is they will be the gatekeepers as to whether ads get on websites or not. So Google and Yahoo are afraid, you know what, if we're going to make up money off advertising, it might mean eventually in the end that we have to end up paying Shine or one of these other companies to allow our ads to pass through their ad blockers. That's also what's going on. Because let's just admit it, for the record, the way the internet is financed is ads. I talked about this yesterday with the changing of technology. I've talked about terrestrial radio and how it's financed by advertising. And with people now having more choices of where they can watch, in cable, people can watch stuff on their computers now. Hulu, Roku. Same way with terrestrial radio. It is financed through advertising. Whereas, you know what? There are a lot of people who are talking politics these days because they have technology now that do it for free. They don't need any ads. They're not looking to drive Rolls Royces. They're not looking to have private jets. They have found topics that they are passionate about. They research it and they do their own shows for free. That scares terrestrial radio. That scares those conservative media leaders that you've been following for years. That's what's going on. I've told you, I talked about this, at least touched upon it yesterday. Well, that's what's going on in technology on the internet right now. That the internet is financed by ads, and there are people out there who are trying to figure out a way to do away with them. Because frankly, they're getting in the way of what the internet originally was. Okay? You have to remember that. The internet wasn't always so ad populated. But as it became more popular, of course, advertisers, companies wanted to get involved and get in front of people's eyeballs, and that was one way to do it. Now, the funny thing about this, now see, this is how I think, you know my opinion on a lot of this stuff. When it comes to Walmart and Google, all of these big companies that exist today, I'm not sure any of them will be around 100 years from now. The United States could be we could go perfectly conservative tomorrow, and I'm still not sure these companies are around 100 years from now because things change. If we were to look at the companies that were big 100 years ago, how many of them are big now? A lot of them don't even exist anymore. That's the way it's going to be now as well. To think that Google is going to be around forever is arrogance. If they think, I know they probably the people who lead it, hopefully, they're hoping that's the case, but I doubt that'll be the case. But here's how I know at least one little piece of information that was uttered by some executive at Google that tells me its end may come quicker than we think, despite it being one of the most valuable companies in the world. He claims that Shine Technologies, what they are doing, they're getting between the advertiser and the consumer. They're getting in the way of the advertiser-consumer relationship. And that's why this needs to be stopped. I have some news for this Google executive and anybody else who's involved in advertising that thinks this way. Here's the truth. We don't give a dang about your advertising. I, as a consumer, as a customer who goes to Publix, who goes to gun stores and those things, I don't need your advertising. I know where the stores are. Okay? I, at the age of 45, know what the products are. And for the most part, people buy the same kind of stuff all of the time. You go to the store, the food store, the grocery store, people mainly, 95% of the time, they buy the same stuff. They don't need to have advertising telling them what they should buy. So we don't really have the kind of relationship that I think that this executive is trying to portray. It's mainly a one-way relationship. They stuff, ads and jingles and all of this stuff in our faces. That's not a relationship. The reason that these ad blocking companies exist is because most consumers don't want that relationship if you're going to portray it that way. If we do have a relationship with advertisers, it's one that we want to get out of. It's just a funny way that this executive put that. He's making it sound like advertisers and consumers are married. That we both had a choice of getting into this relationship. I can tell you most consumers don't feel that way. I think your average consumer realizes you go to a baseball game, you're going to see the Coca-Cola sign, you're going to see the Pepsi sign, you're going to see ads on the walls in the outfield, you're going to see them around the venue, you're going to see billboards and these things. But it gets to be too much when people just want to go to find information somewhere on the internet, and you have to hit this X and that X to close this, to close that. There are news stories that there are ads that the link looks like a real news story. All these different ways. I mean, if we are in a relationship with advertisers in the world, then the advertisers are lying to us because they're always trying to cheat on us. They're trying to portray one thing when really it's another. They're trying to portray that advertisement as a news story. You know, clickbait. You've heard me talk about clickbait before. That's all it is. Now, I know what you say, that, well, hey, without the advertising, then there's no internet at all. I don't necessarily believe that. I'm not against advertising per se. And the truth is, for over, centuries, maybe at least a couple centuries, we had newspapers where advertisers were perfectly fine with putting ads in there, little blocks here and there besides stories. And that's the way we did it for a long time. And you know what? The newspaper people seemed to like it. The advertisers seemed to like it. People kept buying newspapers. They weren't bothered by the ads. It seemed to work pretty well. Now, of credit, it's just a piece of paper. It's ink on a page. And that's the way the internet used to be. But with the changing technology, the computer programs getting more sophisticated, those ads have, the stories, the actual information has been in retreat, and the advertising has been on the march. And we need to get back, I think, to a simpler way regarding. Now, if that means less money for everybody, then that's what it means. That's what it means. But I think that the way that I've told you the example of, let's put it this way. I believe that how do I want to put this? The progress of the internet has been hurt by advertising. And the kind of information you get on there, all of it has been hurt by advertising. I bring up the example of the Model T. Imagine if Henry Ford had just given those Model T cars away. And they were advertising all over them. What do you think people would have done to their cars, being that they don't pay for them? They probably would have run them into the ground. And there would have been no reason for Henry Ford or any other car manufacturer doing the same thing to make their products better because they're giving them away anyway. And the reason that how they're making money is through the advertisement money they're getting for allowing their cars to have advertisings from other companies on them. That's what's going on the internet. I realize that a lot of these companies that have tried to go through paywalls and things, it's been tough. But I think eventually that's going to be the way it's going to go. Eventually, remember, the internet is still very young. Very, very new technology. 20 years old. A large majority of people in the United States in the world were born before the internet existed for the common person. Let's put it that way. And we're trying this, and it just seems that the advertisers can't behave themselves. Some of these site owners, they can't pass up the opportunity of making that money, so they deluge their visitors with ads. Not realizing, I think, eventually that they're hurting themselves. Because no matter how many websites are out there, there are still more people who don't have websites, who go out there seeking information, and they don't want those ads to get in the way of what they're trying to do. So although it may be that newspaper circulation is on a downward trend because of technology, The truth is, with the way newspapers were set up, I think that was equitable for everybody. I don't think this is. I think that the way the internet is set up right now, this is something that is good for advertisers, and I'm not so sure good for everybody else. So I enjoy, and when I know that an executive thinks that there's some kind of relationship, kind of mutual relationship between advertisers and consumers, at least that's the way this statement sounds, that just shows me that the arrogance that is really all behind this. Just admit it, man. You just want to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible, no matter if consumers like it or not. Just say it. Don't say that we have some sort of relationship. That's just it's embarrassing to me. You must think I'm an idiot, and you make yourself look like an idiot by saying it. We do not have a relationship. You're in the business of getting stuff in front of my eyeballs, and most people don't want that stuff in front of their eyeballs. And you've abused the goodwill that people have given you for many years by continuing to encroach on what they're trying to do on the internet. And on top of that, I didn't even get to this. It's because of advertising companies on the internet that people are getting tracked. We're all so crazy about privacy and Apple and the iPhone and encryption and everything. Nobody does more tracking on the internet than companies and the ad firms that put those ads on those websites. Nobody. With the cookies that you don't even know are going into your computer, tracking you here, tracking you there. And then these people want to try to tell us that we have some sort of relationship. Well, if we do have it, certainly one way. It's you know what we're doing all the time, and we know nothing about you. And you getting in the way of a service of websites that we want to go to. I've told you, I think that the way the internet is financed has to eventually change. I'm going to keep saying it. Just like I know that cable is changing, people avoiding advertising there. Just like I know terrestrial radio is changing, people going to podcasts and Wi-Fi in cars and satellite radio and all of that. The internet is eventually going to change as well. And those companies that are making big bucks off of advertising everything, eventually I think that they're going to see those wells dry up. Never think that anything is forever. Whether it has to do with the United States or any business, there will be other things that come along and push them, to the back burner, if not totally off the entire stove. One more thing. Saw this thing about this. I've been meaning to talk about this. I'm just not going to have time tonight. About this movie Idiocracy that came out 10 years ago. And it's like a cult movie. And you can see once in a while on Twitter how people have said that, the United States has become an idiocracy. Look at all these idiots. And, I compare this to what I saw yesterday driving to Fort Lauderdale. Pouring rain, people going down the road 80 miles an hour. To me, those people are idiots. Now, they may look at me driving at 30 miles an hour and say, I'm the idiot. That's kind of what's going on in world governments today. Everybody thinks the other person is the idiot. See what I'm trying to say about that? Nobody ever acknowledges that, I may be the idiot. It's everybody else. So I just want to leave you with that piece of information. Maybe I'll go into that a little bit more tomorrow night. But you've been listening to the Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can go to edwarddental.com, where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. edwarddental.com/book is where you can find the first chapter of my next novel, The Comebacks. podcast, Podomatic, SoundCloud, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm in all of those. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dental Domain on Red State Talk Radio.